a respected army commander and a special operations leader who lives under constant persecution, end up forming a complicated bond through long-distance conversations. Lena makes every effort to bring justice and equality not only to her own people, but also to the comrades who are isolated and forced to fight as disposable soldiers in a war zone. The story itself begins with Lena waking up in her room, ready to face another day. From her appearance, it's already clear that she is part of her country's military forces. After having breakfast with her mother, she leaves the house. On the way to work, she sees the newspaper and finds out there was a battle at the headquarters in San Magnolia. The army emerged victorious, with no casualties, thanks to the autonomous combat units. When she arrives at the barracks, Lena finds the officers in a pitiful state, completely drunk, behaving without any discipline or professionalism. She overhears one of the officers speaking about the previous day's battle as if it were nothing important, and that irritates her even more because they treat the combat automatons with complete disregard. When she tries to correct that behavior, she crosses paths with Rose, who surprises her by being active so early. Rose comments that she spent the entire night working, unlike everyone else there. Before Lena can confront the person who disrespected her, Rose warns her that there's no point in fighting back, since everyone believes the enemy will disappear soon, so nobody takes things seriously, and she'll end up being seen as strange if she insists. Later, Lena hears some officers complaining about the demands from Sector 86 and gets irritated again, prompting Rose to directly ask why she's so interested in Sector 86. Lena stays quiet until her bracelet beeps, signaling the beginning of another conflict happening somewhere. Lena heads to the office, sits at her state-of-the-art computer, and begins monitoring the war. She's guiding the soldiers, but to them, she's just another filthy pig who pretends to be kind and act concerned. But in the end, she's also treating them like worthless machines. Right after that, General Karl Stoll surprises her with the news that he's going to change her unit. He explains that one of the team's officers is going to retire and they need someone to take over the role. He says she'll be transferred to Defense Line 1 in Sector 1, known as the Spearhead Squadron. He also adds that this team brings together warriors from all across the East. When researching this unit, Lena realizes she doesn't have enough experience for such an important role, being only a beginner major. But Karl Stoll insists that she is the youngest person to ever earn this position and asks her not to underestimate herself. Then, looking at a picture of her and her father, he says her father would be proud of everything she has achieved so far. When he mentions her mother, Margareta, Lena comments that her mother keeps telling her to get married soon. She once again asks if there's really no one else to take command of that elite unit in her place. Then Karl Stoll explains that the squad she's going to command has a soldier nicknamed the Reaper, and there are stories that he eliminates his own comrades, so it's not just anyone who can lead that team. Lena finds it strange that a processor could cause so much destruction, instead of being destroyed himself. Karl Stoll reveals that her predecessors in that role always try to pressure for retirement, transfer out of the unit, and eventually, some went as far as taking their own lives. Lena is shocked, but Karl Stoll reminds her that she is not forced to accept the position. Even so, she decides to face it and lead the team. He explains that she doesn't need to do more than the basics, asks her not to force a connection with the processors, and also not to record the number of deaths in the reports, since officially, there are no humans on the battlefield. When Lena complains, he says she reminds him of her father, and then officially appoints her as the commander of Unit 1 from Sector 1, asking for the report as soon as she can deliver it. Later on, Rose is surprised that she accepted that position. She is told that she now carries the responsibility of leading the elite unit, which is considered a highly important position. Rose also expresses doubt about the official reports concerning the deaths of soldiers, believing that some people are making up stories just to avoid work. Rose then mentions that one of the soldiers from the Spearhead Squad lost his mind and ended up taking his own life. Lena is shocked just by the thought of it, and Rose reveals that she received a request to investigate the case, since the main suspicion is that the RAID device might be causing it. She said that all they found was that the RAID device was functioning normally, but she made it clear that she was not satisfied with the way Sector 86 handled the situation. After that, she presented an image showing the impact of the device on the brain, explaining that using this equipment could cause serious damage when someone tried to activate both vision and hearing at the same time. Then, she suggested that Lena should join the research and development department if she wanted to better understand the devices and machines, since her role as a soldier would only last 2 more years after the war ended. But in the research area, she could move forward with her career. However, Lena refused, clearly stating that the country was still at war and she had duties to fulfill. In the end, she allowed herself to enjoy a piece of cake prepared by Rose, made with natural ingredients, which was rare, since they had been surviving on artificial food for a long time and eating something real had become a luxury in that era. On the following day, Lena's squad suffered a massive loss, and when she tried to contact one of the soldiers, she was told that one of them had died. She felt terrible for not being able to lead the group properly at that moment, just before her transfer to the Spearhead Squadron. When she informed her subordinates about the change, one of them gave his most sincere condolences in an ironic tone, and right after that, he asked her to say hi to the Reaper. Meanwhile, in Sector 86 itself, Shin was going over his notes until it was time for breakfast. He went to eat with the other soldiers, who were making fun of a fellow member who had lost control during the last battle. Later, Shin spoke with a friend who said he would rather die under the Reaper's command than follow the orders of a white pig. Later that night, they faced a brutal confrontation that ended with one of their companions severely wounded. When things calmed down, Shin went to check on his friend and realized he no longer had a chance to survive, so he was forced to deliver a mercy shot. Afterward, Shin engraved the friend's name on a piece of his robot's armor so he wouldn't be forgotten. Then everyone was surprised because this time, the person sent to command their group was a woman. Lena spoke to them through the earpiece communicator, officially introducing herself as their new commander. Shin replied, stating that he led the Spearhead Squadron and was known as Undertaker, and that he was ready to work alongside her. After that, Shin met with his comrades, who said they found the new commander kind of dangerous. During the conversation, Lev, the mechanic, showed up extremely irritated because the vehicles were constantly being destroyed during missions. Lev complained that they had no parts left to repair them and that they could only wait for the arrival of new supplies. Then he had the idea to use pieces from the vehicles of soldiers who had already fallen in battle and asked Shin if he minded. Shin didn't see a problem with it, and when Lev asked about the new handler, he explained that she had already sent a message greeting the group and wanted to maintain a good relationship with the team. He finished by saying that this kind of attitude was not common for a soldier of the Republic. Lev concluded that she seemed like a normal person, then sarcastically said they live such a hard life calling themselves poor souls. In his words, Shin picked up the metal piece with his friend's name on it, and these metal tags with engraved names that he creates are like the dog tags that regular soldiers use. But since processors aren't recognized as human, not even that right is given to them. So Shin took that friend's name and placed it together with the memories of the other fallen comrades. He always engraves the names of those who die so they won't be forgotten. The next day, Shin was reviewing his notes while the others were preparing a celebration. But suddenly an alert came in. An enemy army was approaching, and a storm was about to hit. Unfortunately, that would cause the radar to go offline within 2 hours. They decided to retreat, and Shin gathered everyone to explain the strategy. He reported that there was an enemy group nearby, with reinforcements on the way, and suggested setting up an ambush at a specific location in order to destroy as many enemy vehicles as possible. Just as they were getting ready to act, Lena contacted them to report that the enemy troops were drawing near, but she was surprised to learn that Shin and the team were already on the move, prepared to ambush the enemies. After 2 hours, the Legion appeared. Most of them seemed to be patrol units, and once they realized who they were up against, the squad knew they had to give everything they had. They waited until the exact moment when the enemies reached the designated spot. A direct clash broke out, and Shin continued coordinating the team in the middle of the battle. When the enemies began launching missiles, he immediately ordered everyone to retreat. Lena sent the aircraft coordinates to support them, but Shin asked her to speak only through voice, since transmitting data could give away their location. When Raiden remarked that the number of enemies was too much this time, Shin told him to think of it as a hunt. and to enjoy eliminating each one. Lina was surprised watching how Shin charged at the enemies without hesitation, dodging their attacks with ease. He went on destroying the enemy units one by one, with both speed and precision, and Lina realized how powerful he really was. Gradually, Shin took down a large number of enemies, and they all emerged victorious, securing their first win since Lina had joined the team. Meanwhile, Lina was in a classroom and couldn't hold back when the teacher claimed there had been no more casualties in battle ever since the Republic began using its drones. She responded by saying she would now reveal the real history of the Republic. She explained that the army had been defeated 9 years ago, nearly brought to ruin within just 2 weeks, forcing the Republic to take 2 drastic measures: relocate all citizens to the 85 districts, and pass a law intended to maintain peace during wartime. She also told them that special laws had been enacted. Those laws stripped citizenship and basic rights from anyone who didn't have silver hair and silver eyes, like the Albas. These people were excluded, treated as non-human, and kept in internment camps outside of the districts. That's how Sector 86 was created, sealed off by a fortress built specifically for that purpose. These individuals were called the 86. Then, she showed the students images of the combat machines and revealed that they were actually piloted by real people, not autonomous machines as everyone had been led to believe. But the Albas insisted that no one was inside, because to them, anyone from Sector 86 wasn't even considered human. A student commented that people from District 86 weren't really human, just beings who had failed to evolve like the rest. She firmly responded that they were indeed human, and that they died every day on the battlefield, adding that she herself fought beside them. She was caught off guard when one of the students asked if she had ever been to the front lines. She admitted that she had only been there once, but had never fought since only the people from 86 were forced to risk their lives. At that point, the teacher began to scold her, accusing her of defending the 86. She asked him what the national flag stood for, and when he answered that it symbolized liberty, equality, fraternity, justice, and nobility, he ended his reply by stating that such values applied only to human beings. With that, he told her not to spread falsehoods to the students anymore. Even so, she insisted that the people from 86 were just as human as anyone else, simply of different ages, but they didn't have the same privileges and were never allowed to witness such luxuries up close. Later on, she met with Rose, who warned her that she might be punished for what she had said during class, but Lina wasn't worried, believing that her uncle, Karlstahl, would find a way to handle the situation. She also said it was too late to correct the mistakes of their own nation. When someone asked about her first contact with the so-called Reaper, she explained that they always talked and exchanged ideas about many things, and that she felt a genuine connection, even though they were far apart. At that point, she started recalling his positive traits, saying that he wasn't nearly as terrifying as people often made him out to be. Rose noticed that Lina became nervous whenever she spoke about Shin, and as soon as she returned to her room, she used the raid device to talk to him, eventually spending hours chatting. Meanwhile, the group from the 86 was enjoying their free time with games and food. Shin was reading his journal, and Raiden got curious and asked about Lina. Raiden commented that she seemed to be more than just a spoiled rich girl, but he had to leave when the others called for him. Once Shin was alone, Anju arrived with a piece of cake she had made herself. She asked what he was reading, and he explained that he read to clear his mind when things got overwhelming. Soon after, Lina joined the communication through the raid device, and some of them were already getting tired of her since she had been showing up every day for an entire week. Shin told her they were just relaxing, and she complained that ever since she joined the Spearhead Squadron, all of his reports had been identical. She wanted to know why he cared so much about what happened on the front lines, and he said it was part of her job to analyze strategies and formations. She asked him to send reports regularly, assuring him that she would read every single one. Shin told her he wasn't good with reading or writing because they hadn't received formal education there. Daya joked that he was just lazy and didn't like writing. In the end, Shin had to send Lina a detailed report on all the recent missions. Later, she mentioned that she was in the same age range as them and wanted to know how long they had been serving. They answered that they were in their 4th year and that Shin was already in his 5th, which is why he was the leader. Lena asked if he had any dreams for the future, and he said he had never thought about it. She told him to try and think of something, and he started reflecting on that. The next day, Haruto suggested that the boys sneak a peek at the girls while they bathed in the river. Daya felt embarrassed and refused, but Haruto argued that life was short and they should enjoy it while they could. Daya said everyone should stay loyal, and he saw that as a betrayal. Meanwhile, the girls were enjoying their bath, and Kirina was quietly sitting on the rocks, just watching. They began chatting about what they thought of Shin. Some of them teased Kirina because they knew she liked him, even though she always denied it. Anju said he was calm, and she liked his demeanor, which made Kirina jealous. Anju even joked that she hadn't gone after him only because she liked him too much, making Kirina extremely embarrassed, though she denied it. Everyone already knew the truth. Meanwhile, Daya and the others ended up spying anyway. Haruto and Theo were surprised by how excited he was and how focused he looked, but he claimed it was just to study the girls' behavior. He was soon discovered when they threw him out of the bushes, and the girls decided to strike back. Anju threw a knife at him and stormed over to confront him, terrifying him. She quickly realized he wasn't alone and hit Theo with a rock. That's when they uncovered all the boys hiding and began interrogating them. They asked what the boys wanted, and Daya explained, since Theo and Haruto just made excuses, saying they only came to ask something. Kirina said they could have just used their communication devices, but Theo apologized, saying he didn't want to interfere in case they were talking about romantic stuff. When Haruto mentioned that Kirina had feelings for Shin, they all got distracted and thought the topic had shifted, but then Anju returned and demanded to know what their actual question was. The three of them froze, and Daya ended up asking something random about the color of their underwear, which led to all of them getting beaten up. That night, Kirina was upset over the conversations between Shin and Lena. She stormed out of the room, and Daya went after her. She opened up, saying she wanted Shin to be with the group, since anything could end at any moment. Daya tried to calm her down, saying it was just a phase, and that soon Lena would disappear and stop bothering them. He suggested that she should tell Shin how she felt and asked him to stop talking to that woman. Kirina felt calmer, apologized for how she had reacted, and said she could never forgive those white pigs with silver hair because they were the ones who killed her mother, treating her like a practice target, as if she were a doll. After that, they returned to the group, and Lena was still there, chatting about many things. Raiden commented that during the battles, the darkness was so heavy that the atmosphere felt like pure terror, but he remembered the first time he saw the stars in the real sky. He said he also remembered when those little white and quiet things started falling from the sky. Back then, he said something pretty strange, and he was embarrassed to say it in front of everyone. But Shin remembered what he had said and repeated it to everyone. Raiden got all shy after that, and everyone was surprised when Lena said she dreamed of seeing stars, since in her city the lights never go out. Kei explained that over there, the nights were truly dark, and they lived in isolation. Lena asked if she felt any hatred toward her, and Kai replied that what she felt was anger at the discrimination and oppression, because living in that place was very hard, and it was impossible to love someone who treated them as an inferior race, isolating them and forcing them to fight every single day. Even so, she said she didn't think all Alba people were bad, just like not every 86 was perfect. Kai revealed that she came from a rare race there and had already been through a lot in her previous squad, but she would never hate Lena just because she was an Alba. In the end, she said that, at least for now, she thought Lena was a pretty interesting person. Some time ago, Lena had been with Rose in an abandoned library, searching for evidence. Rose advised her not to get even more involved with the 86, reminding her that they were all human beings and that trust existed among them. Soon after, Rose found a map showing where Sector 86 and the surrounding areas were located. Later that day, Lena went back to her room and decided she would use that map to support the team in battle. Using the raid device, Lena connected with the 86. During the conversation, she was surprised when she heard a cat meowing. The group explained they were taking care of an orphaned cat that had lost its parents, and that was why it was more attached to Shin than to the others. Lena enjoyed hearing about their experiences and learning more about how they lived in the sector. and when she asked what the cat's name was, they said each of them called it something different, so it didn't really have a fixed name, so she ended up drawing the cat at the bottom of a diary page. Right after that, Kay showed up wanting to talk, saying she was more interested in Lena and wanted to hear her opinion about something. When Lena asked why she was suddenly interested, Kay said that, a long time ago, she was saved on the battlefield by a doctor who said he was proud to protect his homeland, and that this gave him motivation to fight. Those words touched Kay, making her believe everyone should follow that example, and she complained that they were always sent to the front lines without anyone even caring to watch their battles. She also said that even their own people didn't try to communicate with them. Suddenly, Kay caught Lena off guard by asking if she was still a virgin. A noise came from Kay's side, and she explained she didn't mean it literally, but rather that she saw Lena as someone innocent who still believed everything was perfect and that this wasn't a bad thing. Then Kai warned that the job didn't really suit Lena, telling her not to get too involved because they weren't fighting for any heroic cause. She suggested Lena should stop maintaining contact and try to find someone to replace her before she ended up regretting it. A few days later, they were in another battle, and Lena tried to give support using information, but she realized the group had already set up the strategy to attack, so she just followed along. She suggested that one of them should divert to another point to create a distraction, but was surprised when Raiden said her plan involved using someone as bait and she actually thought it was a valid idea. Kay quickly realized that Lena had access to a new map, so Lena thought about sharing the information. The group was surprised that she agreed to share confidential data, but she replied that it would be useless if they didn't use it. In the middle of that conversation, the group was already facing the enemy. Lena was following everything through the map, until she saw Kai charging directly at an enemy. Before she could warn her not to go, Kai's signal disappeared, and the last words Lena heard from her were that she couldn't move and didn't want to die at that moment. As the enemy approached, after Kai's death and the end of the battle, Lena began blaming herself, thinking she should have found the map sooner. She apologized to everyone, but was shocked when they said people like her didn't care about their deaths, forgetting everything even before dinner, since they didn't have real responsibilities there. They said she was a hypocrite. Then Theo let out all his anger, saying that people like her would always treat them as inferior, never seeing them as real human beings. He said there was no point in being kind and talking every day, because she had never even bothered to learn anyone's real name. He revealed that they were all forced to be there, pushed by her people to face death every day. Every word from Theo hurt Lena's heart even more, showing how much resentment they held against her and her ancestors. As Theo was speaking out of rage, Raiden interrupted and asked Lena to cut the connection, because no one was in the mood for a calm conversation anymore. In the end, Theo ended up feeling responsible for Kai's death. The next day, the group returned to their routine, but Theo seemed distant. They noticed he had drawn a fox with an angry expression, and Kirina asked if he was affected by what he had said to Lena, but he pretended it was nothing. Later, he was approached by Anju and Rin, who took his jacket. Anju fixed the button that had fallen during the battle, while Daya commented that he had changed after venting his anger at Lena, just like the Fox Commander used to do. Anju admitted they were jealous because he managed to get close to someone important, since she herself didn't see any value in people from Alba. Later, Theo went to the garage, where he found Shin repairing his vehicle. He thought about asking what the Fox Commander would say to Lena in his place, but gave up before hearing any answer, saying that white-haired girl wouldn't speak to them anymore. Shin replied that the commander who used the fox as his symbol would never say something like that to Lena, and that he knew Theo didn't feel that way deep down, and in a way, that made Theo feel ashamed. At night, Shin went to his room, wrote Kai's name alongside the others who had died in the war, and kept wondering what Lena was thinking. The next day, Lena met with Rose and told her everything that had happened the day before. Rose said they needed to accept that each person lived in their own world, but Lena couldn't accept that idea. Rose said it was impossible to picture her going to Sector 86 and fighting alongside them, and that now the only thing left was to take care of herself. When Rose mentioned that she had made her favorite dessert, Lena replied that she didn't want to eat anything. Rose was surprised that she gave so much importance to not knowing their real names, since they would never meet face to face. Then Lena explained that she knew Rose's real name because they had a friendship, and that a name represents who a person is. After thinking about it, she realized that she had always treated the 86 as if they weren't truly human. Rose said she was exaggerating, claimed that she and the 86 group weren't friends, and that if she really saw them as real people, she would have asked for their real names from the start. She advised it was time to keep her distance from them. Lena felt hurt by all this resistance and said she had no choice, since they were so different in so many ways that any involvement would only bring regret. Rose said the war had already begun, and there was no turning back. She suggested Lena return to the lab and take a break from leading the squad. But Lena rejected the suggestion and left the room, irritated. On her way out, Lena began remembering the time she went to the front lines with her father, who was a colonel. They were inside a helicopter, flying over the area, when they were suddenly caught by an attack from the 86's vehicles. At that moment, her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of her uncle, Carlstall. She opened up to him, saying she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened before. Despite the sadness over her father's fate, Lena commented that, at least, seeing Sector 86 up close made her hold tightly to the principles that the country had abandoned. Carlstall said that her father was a good man, who always wanted to do the right thing and turn that place into something better. But he admitted that he felt ashamed that her father had been killed in that way, especially because, deep down, he had only watched everything from afar, and her father never realized that before he died. He had always believed that only the soldiers from Sector 86 were the ones who died, and that was why he brought his daughter there. After that, Carlstall said that he didn't want Lena to repeat the same mistakes he did. He praised her work and explained that the only reason he gave her such a difficult unit was because he wanted her to truly understand what those people were going through, but that she was no longer obligated to continue. Still, Lena insisted on staying as the commander of the Spearhead Squadron. Looking at her, Carlstall asked if she still believed in the ideals of the Republic. He explained that those values are called that way because most people never manage to reach them, and those who still chase them are often seen as fools. After that conversation, Lena went home, filled with thoughts about what Theo had said. When she couldn't take it anymore, she ran to the cemetery of the war victims and decided to call Shin. When Shin answered, she apologized for what had happened the day before, and also for things from the past. She told him her full real name and asked him to reveal the names of the others too. Shin replied that she shouldn't let Theo's words affect her, because that wasn't everyone's opinion. Most of them understood that she hadn't placed them in that situation and didn't even have the power to change it. She said she felt it was inconsiderate to talk to them without even knowing their names. But he explained that it wasn't necessary, since they had to wear name tags on their vehicles, even without risk of interception, and the processor's data was blocked just to make sure no one would treat them like ordinary people. Lena became outraged, called all of that cowardice, and vented, saying she had even thought of running away, but didn't want to live like a coward. She asked, almost begging, for him to say their real names, and Shin finally gave in. She grabbed her notebook and started writing down everyone's name, one by one. When she finished writing, she heard a sound on his end, and Shin explained that he was engraving K's name since the 86 had no graves. They used to cut pieces of their unit's vehicles to carve the names of those who had fallen, swearing that the last one alive would carry those names to their final destination. And it always ended up being Shin himself, since he was the last one in the team, so he saw it as part of his mission. Lena was surprised to find out he had been doing that for 5 years and asked how many had died so far. Shin answered that 561 had died, and that he remembered every single one because he felt responsible for everyone who fought beside him. She understood why he was called the Soul Collector and admitted that she had never had the courage to face those she had left behind. She only felt bad and wanted to apologize to them all. Shin decided to take her to the group so she could apologize in person. Without hesitation, she said sorry to everyone for what happened yesterday and for the way she had acted all this time. She said her real name and admitted that only now she realized she hadn't treated them as real people. When she asked for their real names, Theo got irritated and found her request annoying, especially since Shin had already told her everything, but she insisted that she wanted to hear it from them directly. He complained that it was Shin's fault for not keeping quiet, even though he already regretted the way he had spoken. In the end, Theo said that the symbol on his vehicle was a laughing fox, which he had inherited from his former commander, who belonged to the same race as Vladlina. He said that, although strong, this commander was so cheerful and spontaneous that he often seemed a bit foolish, and he thought it was wrong for the 86 to fight alone against the Empire's enemies. He fought bravely alongside his team, but they were all eventually killed. Theo then made it clear that he didn't want her to do the same, but he also wouldn't see her as one of them as long as she stayed behind the walls. Right after that, he said his name, and the rest of the squad followed. When it was Raiden's turn, he apologized, admitting they used to think she was just pretending to be kind or was being fake, simply because she talked to them every day. Even so, he agreed with Theo. They wouldn't treat her as part of the group. He said that nothing would change just because she knew their names, and that they would all keep talking only to pass the time. He also suggested that she should consider a different job instead of being responsible for the unit. Lena replied that she would stay in contact if that could help them have better moments. And while Shin was heading to his room, Lena realized that he still hadn't said his own name. He said he had forgotten, and when he finally shared his full name, she was surprised and asked if he knew someone named Xiaorui, known as Dullahan. As soon as the memories came back, Shin revealed that Xiaorui was his older brother. Lena then remembered the day she almost died, when the helicopter crashed with her father and the guards, and after everyone had died, she was terrified when she saw an enemy drone almost shooting at her. One of the 86 vehicles appeared just in time and saved her life. After defeating the enemy, the commander came out to check on her, and she saw that it was Xiaorui, Shin's older brother. He took her along, offered her some candy, and before leaving, she told him what her father used to say about all the horrible things the Empire did to the 86, and asked why he helped her anyway. He answered that he was part of the country, that it was their mission to fight and protect, and he was proud of it, promising to keep fighting until the end. Xiaorui was surprised when she gave him a piece of chocolate. He said he had a younger brother, about her age, and he hoped he had already grown up and become strong. He shared the chocolate with her, and when she asked why he didn't take care of himself like his brother surely was doing, he explained that he still couldn't go back home. Later, he placed her inside the drone, introduced himself, and explained that both he and his brother were born in the Republic, but their parents had come from a neighboring country called the Empire of Jayad, which was the one that built the enemy forces, the ones known as the Legion. Lena asked Xiaorui if he wasn't afraid of going to war, and he admitted that he could only keep going as long as he was fighting. He also said he didn't want to die yet, because he still wanted to see his brother, Shin. Then, the scene shifted back to the present. She asked Shin about his brother, and he revealed that he had passed away 5 years ago. Afterward, he said he remembered a task he had to complete ever since he left the military, something he had been looking for over the past 5 years, but would only go after the next day. On her way to work, Lena ended up running into Rose, who this time was wearing her uniform. The two spent some time together, eating cake as usual once they arrived. Rose suggested the two of them should go look at dresses for the party happening the following week. Lena remembered she needed to attend that event, even though she was buried in things to do. Lena then asked if her friend would go to the event accompanied by her latest marriage candidate, but Rose said her current one was a 5-year-old boy. She pointed to the wall, and when Lena looked at it, she saw Rose had stuck up photos of possible romantic candidates she had already rejected. Lena asked why, and Rose explained it was just a joke made by her team. And noticing Lena had gone pale, Rose asked if everything was alright and warned her about the danger of using the raid device too much, since sharing senses could lead to mental issues. Lena said she had spent the whole night analyzing combat data, so Rose insisted there was no use in always trying to help the 86. After leaving Rose's laboratory, Lena contacted Shin to say she didn't want to go to the party because she feared a conflict might break out during the event. He said everything would be fine. Lena then expressed surprise that the country was holding a party even during wartime, and Shin replied that nothing that happened within the walls affected them directly. He thanked her for analyzing the enemies, but warned her that she didn't need to spend all her time on that, or she would end up like him, always focused on the war. Lena decided to listen and try to enjoy life a little more. He asked if the party was for the Revolution Festival, and she was curious how he knew that. Shin said he had memories of seeing fireworks in a park with a fountain in front of the palace when he was a child. Looking out the window, Lena saw the palace and asked if he had lived in Sector 1 as a child. He explained he only remembered walking with his brother but couldn't recall any faces or voices from his family. She said Xiaorui really wanted to be with him again at home. During the conversation, Lena ended up seeing a couple kissing nearby, got very embarrassed, and ran back to her room. Right then, she was startled when Shin warned that he was going to meet with his friends because an unexpected battle against the Legion was coming. She ran back, confused, since she hadn't received any attack alert. She asked how he knew about it, but then she heard noise from his side. After that, he asked her to turn off the raid device, because this time there were too many black sheep. She didn't understand what that meant, and Shin only said he would explain later. She didn't want to end the call, because without the para raid, she wouldn't know what would happen to them. He said he had already told her everything he could. When he went out to face the enemies alone, Lena was shocked to hear screams and cries for help, which left her terrified. She only held on because she remembered Kay's last words. After that, she returned home feeling weak, a side effect of using the para raid. She thought about using it again, but the voices came back into her head, along with flashes of strange memories, until everything stopped with Kay's scream, saying she didn't want to die. In the end, Lena was left staring at her reflection from the balcony. Meanwhile, they discovered that the enemy drones were using the voices of the dead 86 to confuse everyone. In the middle of the battle, Shin was surprised to hear Kay's voice again, even though he had burned her body to prevent that. Later, the 86 managed to defeat the enemies, and back at the base, Raiden commented that it seemed like everyone was about to fall asleep from exhaustion, and that they were feeling lonely because Lena hadn't spoken to them anymore. He thought she wasn't going to look for them again, but shortly after, Lena was startled to hear Shin calling, and she apologized for having lost control that day. When she asked about the voices, he explained they were spirits of people who had died but hadn't moved on, and that he believed he would end up like that someday, because he could hear the voices inside the enemy legions. He also explained that their enemy was a defeated army that had lost its purpose after the Empire fell. It was then that she realized he knew when the enemy fleet was arriving because he could hear their movements. Shin said he always heard that, even while sleeping. She asked if he was hearing them at that moment and how far they were. He replied he didn't know exactly, but he could sense all the fleets beyond the old borders of the Republic, since he had been used to that for a long time. Then, he wanted to know if the government believed the conflict would end in 2 years, because Theo had heard that from the former commander and also knew that the enemy fleet had a countdown to shut down in that time. Lena explained that the enemy's central processor was created based on the human brain, so it would stop functioning in 2 years. Shin suspected they might try to use other battlefield materials, like the brains of dead people, to create a new one. Right after that, he said that the enemy's nervous system was more advanced than anyone else's, which is why it was forbidden to bury the bodies of the 86 so their brains would rot and not be reused. But they had managed to recover Kay's brain and copy it exactly as it was before she died. Lena understood that those were the infamous black sheep, enemy machines that blended in with regular ones and emitted frightening ghost-like sounds. Shin said this was becoming more and more frequent, leaving their group even more exposed, risking losing the war in less than 2 years. Since the new model fleet wouldn't stop, she asked about the 86, and he explained that only the children who fought by his side were still alive, but sadly, none of them would last long. He asked if her people would be willing to fight when that moment came. Lena couldn't answer, because she didn't understand how the war was still going on, and she commented that the enemy fleets had been cut in half compared to previous years. Shin explained that those were only the fleets they were able to keep under watch, but there were many more far behind. He also said the black sheep were treated better than the regular fleet, which had been badly damaged after using the brains of the dead, and he wondered what could happen if they ever managed to get a full brain of a fleet commander. Lena was surprised to realize that it wasn't just a theory, they were real. They truly existed. Shin explained to her that he could hear the voices, because the commander's orders spread too far, and one of them was stationed behind Combat Sector 1. Lena realized the group needed to eliminate the fleets before all the 86 were wiped out, and she decided she would give everything she had to help, because she wanted Shin to survive until the end of his military service and finally be able to leave the army in peace. Shin remembered when he was a child and got caught in the middle of a battle, ending up alone in a huge library. After the fight, he kept wandering until he found a vehicle with the Reaper's symbol, and inside it, there was a decomposing corpse. That's when he realized he had found Xiaorei's body, already dead and missing the head. A few years later, the members of the 86 suffered a lot from the heat during their travels in the armored vehicles, and during that time, they got closer, since each of them came from a different place. Once Daya, Haruto, and Rika became friends, they would talk only about the girls they liked. Later on, Daya got startled when he saw Anju coming toward him. He tried to change the subject, but Nico was quicker and made a comment about the rich girl who leads the squad. Then Theo even drew a sketch of Lena's body as an overweight woman with a pig's head. Everyone wondered how she would react when talking to them, while Daya joked that maybe she was a goddess coming down to save them all. After that, the group had fun dancing and playing around, while Shin just watched from afar. Kurina came over to talk to him and asked if the others had been drinking, but he told her they were just enjoying themselves, and the cups only had water. Kurina noticed the trees full of blossoms and remembered how, in the beginning, the combat personnel didn't like cherry trees because they bloom quickly and then fall just as fast. After that, she showed Shin the boat with the emblem she had made herself. Suddenly, Nico called everyone to come join the group, and Kurina felt relieved that there hadn't been a surprise attack. Soon after, the girls gathered and told Kurina the popular story about Shin's emblem, saying he was a reaper looking for his own lost head, and if someone removed the scar from his neck, no one would ever find his head again. Everyone said they were excited to have him as their leader. Raiden made a joke that Shin was already becoming famous, and right after that, they all got excited when they saw shooting stars and ran off to look, leaving him behind. 4 months went by, and the 86 fought in the same place under Vladlena's command. And after losing several comrades that day, they ended up facing Scorpion-type vehicles, which outnumbered and outpowered them. Even so, they insisted on staying in the fight. But in the middle of Vladlena's plan, Rika's vehicle got hit and was heavily damaged, which forced Daya to take a risk in order to try and save her. In the end, he fell when his vehicle was destroyed. He was already out of ammunition, and shortly before saying his final words, he was attacked by incendiary robots that blew up the armored vehicle. Meanwhile, on the other side, Rika was still holding on, trying to shoot the enemy with her weapon. Upon realizing there was no escape, she decided to end her own life and asked Shin to keep fighting until the very end. Shin and the few remaining allies continued the battle, even after suffering so many losses. When the combat finally ended and daylight came, Shin asked Lena to cut the communication, because he was going to give Daya a mercy shot before he could turn into a monster. Lena refused to disconnect, saying that her role as their commander was to remain there until everything was truly over. After putting an end to Daya's suffering, Shin heard a strange sound coming from near the wrecked vehicle. Back at the base, everyone noticed that Anju was clearly shaken, even though she tried to keep up appearances in front of the group. That night, Shin and Raiden talked about everything that had happened, and Shin said it was only a matter of time before the end came for all of them. Raiden asked him if he really intended to keep fighting alone just to fulfill his dream of building a grave for his brother. Shin replied that it was all he had left, since his brother never forgave him before dying. Raiden realized that Shin had never truly gotten over what happened with his brother's head. While Shin went back to his room and recorded the names of the friends who had died that day, together with the rest, he also remembered Xiaorei's voice after Daya's death, blaming him for everything, and recalled the moment when, as a child, he was told that he had caused the death of their parents and would also end up being the reason for his own death, something extremely traumatizing for a child to hear. The next day, Lena was enjoying the birthday cake Rose had prepared. After that, she received another gift and was surprised because she had already been given one earlier. She wondered why a rocking chair had been chosen, and Rose explained that she had received it from Nikolaus but never used it. She thought it would be a good gift because Lena looked tired. When Rose asked what had prompted that conversation, Lena hesitated. wondering if the para-raid could somehow interfere with the brain and cause someone to develop some kind of ability. She said that if that were the case, they would open the subject's skull to examine everything from the inside, just like they had planned to do with Shin. In the end, he would be discarded. Lena was horrified by this and quickly left the room. Her friend was saddened that Lena had left without even enjoying the cake. That night, Lena stared at the drawing she had made, imagining what the members of the Spearhead unit might look like, and felt sorry for Shin, who had to kill his own companions to stop them from turning into part of the enemy. Later, she went to see Carl Stahl to report everything about the latest battle. He asked how many vehicles they still had left, and she answered that there were only 16 members of the 86 remaining. She then suggested using a military mortar to help and try to prevent more losses in the group. Carl Stahl explained that the mortar had to be reloaded after every shot, and that it was located in the middle of a minefield, making the entire operation extremely dangerous. He also said that he would not do that for the 86, because they were considered expendable, unlike the soldiers of the state. Lena was furious at his disregard for the lives of the 86 and for treating them as if they were nothing but garbage. When Lena tried to reason with Carl Stahl, saying that the members of the 86 were just as human as anyone else and that they also suffered greatly on the battlefield, Carl Stahl reminded her that he had already warned her not to get too emotionally involved with that group. After that, he handed her a document and said he was considering sending them on a mission to destroy a fleet base that was being constructed near their area. At the time, Lena was shocked because he wanted to throw them into another fight without even offering any kind of compensation for the ones they had already lost. And she argued that they needed reinforcements, just like other military units received. Carl Stahl insisted that if they didn't take out the base before it was completed, the Spearhead unit would be the first to suffer. So if she really wanted to save them, she would have to convince them to accept this mission. With not much else she could do, Lena ended up passing the mission on to Shin. She apologized, saying she had failed to ensure they would wait until replacements arrived for the ones they had already lost. Shin said that the group was already aware of the fleet base, and in his view, it was nothing more than a trap. Lena didn't expect that he would accept to attack, even knowing the risks involved. She was still upset about not getting the authorization to use the mortar. The squad commented that they had never even seen that weapon in action, and hadn't planned to count on it from the beginning. Before the call ended, Shin noticed from her voice that she was a bit tense and asked if something was wrong, suggesting that she take a break and have something sweet to ease the stress. Lena ended up laughing, saying he was just like his brother, and recalled the time she had received half a chocolate bar from him during a difficult moment. Shin asked what his brother's face looked like when he spoke about her, and Lena replied that he would smile with a gaze full of kindness. Without thinking, she said that the time spent talking like that was really precious to her, but then turned red from embarrassment and quickly hung up. A few days later, Lena decided to help the 86 members by authorizing the shipment of supplies to them through the Republican Army. When the clerk asked what was inside, she told him it was special ammunition, and even paid him extra so he wouldn't ask any further questions. On her way back, Lena saw several people organizing preparations for the Revolution Festival. She tripped and ended up falling in front of everyone, felt embarrassed, and quickly left the area. Later, in the office, she used the system to contact the Spearhead squad. By the end of her shift, already at night, she was caught off guard when the Revolution Festival party had already started, with people taking photos and fireworks lighting up the sky. She remembered when Kirina once said they didn't need her for anything, and that nothing would change without a commander at the helm. Lena started wondering if trying to face all that madness wasn't actually making things harder for them. She asked herself whether constantly hearing the voices of their fallen comrades didn't bother them all the time. Then, a child nearby fell and started crying loudly, and that made Lena recall what Kirina had said, that people like them had to endure hearing death screams constantly, and that the best way to die was blowing up along with the vehicle. While feeling all the pain of the Spearhead members, she looked around and saw people celebrating as if nothing tragic existed in the world. When she got home and tried to reach out to them via para-raid, she noticed that Shin wasn't there. Raiden told her that he had gone to bed early because he was tired, and Lena wondered if it was because of the voices of the dead. Theo answered that it was something she couldn't change, and that sometimes even they felt completely drained just from staying in that sector. Lena said she fully understood how the atmosphere kept getting heavier due to all the comrades who died in every battle, and that ever since she took over, not a single new member had joined the group. She then asked them to hold on just a little longer while she tried to solve that. The next day, Lena went to Karlstall saying that they could no longer wait, that they urgently needed new members to replace those they had lost. Even before she insisted, Karlstall said the reinforcement plan for the Eastern Theater was already prepared and asked her to continue working until the supplies arrived. Relieved, Lena was glad that the squad was finally going to get some support. Karlstall then reminded her of the Revolution Festival and told her to pick a suitable outfit to represent the family during the event. At the ceremony, Lena chose a black dress and managed to go through the entire event without any man asking her to dance. When Rose showed up, she was surprised by Lena's appearance and commented that she looked like she was in mourning. During their conversation, Rose spotted one of the men who had previously hit on her at the party and ran off before he could notice her. Shortly afterward, Lena received an unexpected call from Shin. She thought it might be a problem, but he said he called because he missed talking to her at that hour. He also took the opportunity to let her know that the supplies had arrived and thanked her for giving them the chance to celebrate the festival with fireworks. Lena said she thought the fireworks would look beautiful in their sky and suggested that maybe one day they could watch them together, once he left the military. She also said she wished his friends had been able to see the fireworks before they died. Shin replied that they were surely grateful for it. He also felt glad that she still remembered Xiaorei, because he himself could barely recall his face anymore. When he asked if Lena would continue to remember them even after everyone was gone, she was moved and promised she would not let anyone else die. In the morning, Shin received ammunition from the state army and had to endure jokes and condescending remarks to avoid causing trouble for Lena. As soon as they were alone, he opened the box and found several fireworks inside. The whole group got excited, except for Kirina, who grew irritated and thought about asking Lena to stay away from them, since now she was even sending gifts. In her mind, it was better to cut off that connection, as the others were pretending like nothing was really happening. Anju then remembered what Daya had said, that Lena was not a bad person, but it was safer not to get involved with her. Because of that, Shin and Raiden hadn't told her anything either, fearing she would be hurt by the truth. Meanwhile, Kirina asked Anju if she was alright, as she had never taken a bath with another girl before. Anju said that by now, she no longer cared about that. Afterwards, she remembered the time when Daya complimented her hair during their first meeting, even though he knew she carried the blood of the white pigs. Kirina also recalled the first time she saw Shin end the suffering of one of their comrades, and that had left her deeply shaken. She began to wonder who would be the one to end Shin's suffering when the time came, and if anyone would have the courage to carry out euthanasia for him when it was needed. After that, they engaged in several battles against enemy forces, and when Lena warned them about the danger of long-range artillery, Shin became disturbed by the thought that he might end up encountering the spirit of his brother in battle. Even so, Lena decided to order a retreat so they wouldn't risk facing that overwhelming artillery fire. Once the team managed to escape, Lena promised they would soon receive reinforcements, so they could continue fighting without constantly worrying about the lack of soldiers. She couldn't hide her frustration, since the general had already confirmed that the supply request had been approved. Shin chose to speak with the team first before opening his heart to her, and once everyone agreed, he explained that it would be better if she stopped trying to help, because no matter how hard she tried, nothing would change. The army would never send replacements, precisely to ensure that they would be wiped out, as that had always been the Republic's objective. Lena didn't quite understand what he meant, so Haruto explained that replacements would only be sent after everyone was dead, since they had just received new Juggernaut drones. Raiden added that the army had no intention of letting anyone survive, and Theo finished by saying that the so-called 5-year service rule was a complete lie, created just to make their deaths easier. They then added that the military did it all on purpose to prevent the people from Sector 86 from rebelling. To them, surviving up until now was already a sign of cleverness, and the others saw them as heroes for continuing to fight even though they knew exactly what the outcome would be. Lena was horrified upon realizing they were being forced to fight until not a single one of them remained, and that Sector 86 was actually just a place where they were sent to battle until the very end of their lives. Kurina said that no one who went to war ever came back, and that leaving the camps was forbidden. She asked why they kept fighting despite knowing all of this, and why they didn't try to escape or take revenge against the Republic. Raiden explained that taking revenge wasn't difficult. All they had to do was let the enemy invade the country, but they would all die as well. He said he chose not to do that because an Alba woman had protected him in Sector 9, back when he was just a 12-year-old child. As for Shin, he had been raised by an Alba priest, one of those who refused to abandon their land and were ultimately sent to the camps. He explained that some of them had Alba blood, and all of them carried documents proving it. Even though many Albas were seen as worthless, there were still good people among them who tried their best to protect the others however they could. In the end, each one chose their own path and decided to die fighting, since that was the fate they had been given. Not long after, Shin was carrying parts from the Juggernaut drones of his fallen comrades, and told Raiden that Kei's team hadn't been able to find Chaise's Juggernaut. Raiden said that what happened during the last battle wasn't his fault. Shin explained that today's attack had been a test of a new weapon developed by the fleet, which ended up killing 4 of them all at once. He thought that if that weapon were ever completed, it could mean the end of the Republic. In the middle of their conversation, Shin heard Xiaorei's voice, and this time he was able to pinpoint it. He realized that his brother was looking for him. He asked Raiden if he wanted to end his own life before dying the next day, but Raiden answered that they would all stay together until the final moment. Meanwhile, Lena couldn't stop thinking about what the squad had told her. When she saw how many missions they had already completed, she became furious and went looking for Rose in the middle of the night. Rose told her there was nothing more that could be done and suggested she give up and stop thinking about it. That left Lena indignant, and she shouted, begging Rose to stop acting as if she were a cruel person. Rose got angry and snapped back, saying the one who needed to stop pretending to be a heroine was Lena, because it was impossible to save the 86. She then pointed to the house next door, saying that scientists who worked with her father used to live there. But everything changed because of the war. Their children had ended up becoming members of the 86. She remembered that they were siblings she used to go to school with and play with, but not long after, they stopped coming to school, and her classmates started bullying her for being friends with people they called dirty skins. At that moment, she froze and couldn't do anything. Her younger brother, who was the same age, didn't understand what was happening and just wanted to keep playing in the yard. But she didn't allow it, they argued, and in the heat of the moment, she called him a dirty skin too. Rose was horrified at herself for having said that. When her father wanted to help the boys, she refused, saying they weren't her friends and that she wouldn't risk anything for them. The next day, they were sent to the camp, and all she did was try to convince herself that nothing could have been changed. In the end, she told Lena that the two of them were equally responsible, even if Lena tried to act like the good one. After saying that, she took Lena to the place where the brothers used to live and said they had inherited a special ability from their mother to sense each other's feelings without speaking. She explained that this gift caught the attention of her father, and when the military found out, they ordered him to improve a device that could imitate this power and replace traditional radios. That's how the communication system they all use today was created. Lena was devastated to learn that the device had been made by sacrificing many people from Sector 86. Used as test subjects because the device required word exchange, it couldn't be tested on animals. And even worse, all those test subjects were children who died suffering. Because of this, her father ended up taking his own life, and that information had been kept hidden from everyone. At that moment, Rose said she realized she deserved to die because she had abandoned her friends just like her father had. She decided to continue her father's research, including trying to take care of the victims. Rose said Lena was just as wrong as she was, perhaps even more, because she had gotten even more emotionally involved with the 86. And now they were being sent to die. She threw all the blame onto her, saying that if Lena had left them alone and allowed them to die, they wouldn't have received a suicide mission. Lena left the house after Rose said she hated her and didn't want to see her face ever again. Time passed, and Lena remained trapped in her thoughts, torn between what she had heard from Rose and the promise she had made not to let anyone die. She decided to go to Karlstall to request the cancellation of the Spearhead Squad's reconnaissance mission, since it made no sense to keep sending them towards certain death. Karlstall told her that it was better for the country if every single member of the Spearhead Squad were dead. He remarked that if the people ever discovered what had been done at the end of the war, the Republic would become a source of international shame, remembered only as a nation of tyrants. The plan was to eliminate everyone and erase any evidence, so no one could ever accuse the country of anything. Lena objected, saying that they were part of the nation too and deserved to be protected, just as the saint had once preached. The Spearhead Squad replied that the country was filled with selfish and cruel people, so much so that they had even killed the saint out of greed, and there was no reason to expect anything good from people like that. In the end, he said it was already too late to seek freedom or equality. Lena refused to accept that and accused him of trying only to justify his own despair. He told her that she could speak about her dreams and hopes all she wanted, but warned that it would be difficult to convince anyone of what she believed, since hope and despair were inseparable, like two sides of the same coin. She longed for something, but could never reach it. Lena finally gave in to reality and informed Shin about the mission they were being assigned. She said it was a suicide mission and regretted not being able to help, which was why she tried to convince him to change his mind and escape. Shin said that everyone has their time, and there was no one to blame, only their fate arriving sooner than expected. Lena grew furious because he had already accepted the idea of dying, as well as the deaths of his comrades. But Shin assured her that they were not going out there to die. They were going to try and win their freedom and finally walk the path they had chosen for themselves. For them, it was necessary to fight in order to keep moving forward. And after hearing those words, Lena remembered his goal and that he couldn't die before reaching it. She realized that his true objective was to defeat his own brother, and she begged him to stop, saying he wouldn't be able to face him even if they were now enemies. Shin explained that the only way he could move on was by freeing himself from his brother, and before ending the conversation, he asked Lena to stop contacting the group, because he didn't want her to hear Xiaorei's final words. The call ended right after she listened to what their plan would be against the enemy. Meanwhile, Shin saw that everything was in place for the final battle, and Raiden advised him not to act recklessly, as he usually did, but Shin made no promises. Later, he added Haruto's name to the list of those who had already passed. Raiden said he felt deeply saddened by his friend's departure, because if he had survived, they might have gone on a trip together. The remaining members of the Spearhead Squad got ready to leave. Each one said their own personal goodbye to the base in their own way. The next day, the 5 of them gathered to share one final meal before departing. They remembered their first day at that location, promised not to lose their dignity, and to fight until the end. During the journey, Theo remarked that Lena hadn't spoken to them before the mission, and Anju agreed, saying she should have at least said goodbye before what could be their final mission. When they reached the vehicles, they noticed food had been left in each one of them, and they quickly understood that it was Raiden who had prepared it for them. After that, they got ready for the final operation and began advancing through enemy territory. Once they departed, the base was left completely empty. Elsewhere, Xiaorei remembered the final moments that had nearly led to Shin's death, fueled by the rage he had once felt. He had always blamed his brother for their parents' deaths, believing they had gone to war because of him. Eventually, he realized that Shin was not responsible, but the urge to protect him had grown so strong it had taken control. After losing his mind to the enemy, he ended up becoming the commander of the fleet that would now face Shin and his allies. From that point on, he realized he would never be able to protect his younger brother, and so he chose to ensure that the two of them would die together and remain together forever. Xiaorei began advancing toward the spearhead juggernauts. The group quickly realized they were about to face the full strength of the enemy's vehicles, especially after seeing that massive army and hearing the strange voices grow louder. Shin was even pleased to recognize his brother among them and told the group to keep moving and try to hide in the forest while he attempted to defeat his brother alone. Raiden refused to go on without him and declared he would not abandon his friend. The enemy's attack came first, and Shin charged forward. determined to face Xiaorui directly. When the battle began, they realized that the enemy's objective was to push them away from Xin, and the fighting style was completely different. Raiden quickly understood it was a tactic from Xiaorui, who wanted some time alone with his brother. Xin noticed that his shots were having no effect on the enemy drones, and quickly realized that Xiaorui wanted him to come closer so he could end it all himself, while the rest of the squad tried to reduce the number of enemies. But new enemies kept appearing every minute. Suddenly, they were startled when they saw missiles forming wings in the sky, then falling like a rainstorm. At that moment, Raiden felt someone trying to connect to his vision, and immediately understood that Lina was attempting to communicate in the middle of the battle. He got upset and warned that doing that could blind her. Since they were about to face weapons, she couldn't even operate. Lina replied that it didn't matter anymore. Whether they followed the rules or used forbidden weapons, nothing made sense in that republic. Raiden was taken aback when she said she wasn't there for them, but because the country was at risk if the enemy broke through their defenses. When she asked about Xin, he answered that he had gone to face his brother. Meanwhile, Xin had managed to get close to Xiaorui's drone and positioned himself right in front of it. He tried to confuse his brother by sprinting quickly through the trees, giving no chance for a direct hit. At the right moment, he jumped and managed to land a blow. But Xiaorui's drone released sticky mechanical arms, grabbed him, and threw him far away. At the same time, the squad saw the enemy beginning to retreat, and they felt relieved, thinking the fight might ease up. But then they saw Xin's vehicle down, and Xiaorui approaching to end everything. Lina asked Kirina to send the enemy coordinates in exchange for allowing her to deploy some special wave-based attacks. Kirina hesitated, but in the end, decided to trust her in order to save Xin. Now, on the other side, Xiaorui was excited, as he was about to see his brother again. He wanted to discard his human body right away, but then he saw the squad charging toward him, fighting the rest of his followers. He decided to take care of things himself, but was surprised by a missile approaching at high speed. He got angry, realizing the missile could hit Xin, and instead chose to take the full impact to protect his younger brother. After being directly hit by the missiles, the others tried to wake Xin, who was unconscious and injured. He felt Xiaorui's hands tightening around his neck, trying to strangle him again, just like before. He realized that his brother hadn't forgiven him, so he decided to end it once and for all and give Xiaorui eternal rest. He leapt forward, said his farewell, and launched a missile directly at the drone's weak point. When Xiaorui saw his brother's face, he understood that Xin no longer needed to hold his hand. He apologized and accepted the end. On the other side, Xin was overcome with emotion, remembering his brother's face, and broke into tears like a child after having to do that. By morning, the war had ended, and all 5 of them had survived, thanks to Lina's help. Xin ended up removing his tie while quietly weeping. Raiden suggested disconnecting the link, thinking maybe Xin didn't want anyone to hear him at that moment. It turned out that Rose had planned to help after Lina's visit the day before, when she asked Rose to use the Para-Raid to see the control system of the Republic Army's artillery. At first, Rose didn't want to get involved or support the plan, but she was shocked when she realized Lina was talking about Xin, the boy she used to play with as a child and had abandoned. Lina explained that there were hardly any other young people in Sector 1 their age with an older brother, and that he was the leader she often spoke with over Para-Raid, the one known as the Reaper. Rose started wondering if Xin had ever mentioned her, even suspecting he might still resent her. But Lina told her the truth. She could either help or look away and abandon him for the 3rd time. After the battle, Rose was already preparing to leave. When Lina mentioned that Xin had only survived because of her, Rose replied that she hadn't saved him. As she walked away, Lina felt her heart lighten, knowing the plan had worked. Right after that, Xin called her, saying that he had heard her voice during the battle. Lina took a deep breath, relieved to know that they were all still alive, and was even thanked, as the group expressed their surprise at seeing this more daring side of her. Kirina joked, saying she had thought Lina was going to blow them up along with the enemy drones. Xin was more direct and thanked her especially, saying that he was only able to bring his brother peace because of her. She replied that it had just been a coincidence and promised she would dedicate herself even more to them next time. But she was immediately stunned when she heard the group discussing a plan to advance toward the enemy base, even though their vehicles were damaged and they were almost out of ammunition. They were calm about it, saying they weren't being pursued, so they would go as far as they could. They told her to give her best to the next squad after they were gone. Lena rushed out of the command center while the Spearhead Squadron talked, already prepared to face death. She ran until she couldn't take another step, stopping only when she found out they had crossed the borders of the Republic. They were all thrilled to have escaped from District 86. Lena collapsed from exhaustion and broke down in tears. Later, she found Shin, who said they would keep going forward until the communication line dropped and their juggernauts disappeared from the radar. The group had finally left the sector and were now witnessing places completely new to them. Exploring everything became a new experience. They tested new things as if, at last, they were getting a small taste of peace after so much fighting. A few days later, they arrived at a beach but saw that they couldn't cross the sea with the juggernauts, and they also didn't know anything about the region. At that moment, Shin questioned whether it was still worth continuing the journey. They decided to take a break and enjoy the freedom they had just gained, spending the entire day by the seaside. The next day, Raiden felt as though they were the only ones left in the world. Shin made a sarcastic comment, saying he never imagined himself becoming such a sentimental person. He also found himself thinking about all the friends who had left before, feeling that they hadn't really died, they had just vanished. Raiden asked how many there were, and Shin said 576, including Shaorei. Raiden was surprised to find out that Shin had already engraved his name on their robotic dog. He then reflected on how far he could still carry everyone together. He commented that they only had a limited number of days they could survive without resources. Raiden also asked if Lena had ever asked what Shin planned to do after his military service, and he admitted he had never really thought about it. Later, the group gathered to eat. They decided to head to an old city nearby that had once belonged to the former empire. They kept exploring the abandoned place, and Shin thought about how each of them came from a different place, and that without the war, their paths would likely never have crossed. Raiden asked if the place brought back any memories, and Shin replied that his parents had been born there, but he had never visited the city and had no memories of his parents. Suddenly, he stopped in front of a dark tunnel and almost went in, but Raiden grabbed him and asked him not to run away. Shin explained that they were in enemy territory and that it was normal to hear voices in their heads, but at least they weren't fighting anymore. That night, Anju and Kirina took the opportunity to enjoy a hot bath while the rest stayed back, listening to their usual conversations. Afterward, Kirina just watched Shin sleeping, smiling, while Raiden commented that he had been smiling a lot lately. Everyone noticed he seemed more at peace, even joking around, and they believed it was because he had finally found some peace after fulfilling his objective. But Raiden felt like he himself had nothing left. The next day, everyone was alarmed when they woke up and noticed that Shin had disappeared. They found out he had left behind his juggernaut and the communication device, but had taken a gun with him. They searched for him throughout the city until they found him at the zoo. Raiden became alarmed when he saw Shin approaching an enemy drone. He ran over to him, warning that he didn't need to worry, it was already destroyed and could no longer move. Raiden also mentioned that he had noticed the drone approaching them slowly and that it didn't seem like a reconnaissance unit. He was about to let it go, but he had a lingering feeling that someone inside had been calling out to him since the day before. Shin approached and heard the voice of the drone's ghost saying it wanted to go back home. So Shin picked up his gun and decided to give his old companion a proper farewell, ending its life with a single shot. After that, he asked Raiden if there were any other countries beyond the Republic, and Raiden replied that there were lands beyond the former borders where the enemy hadn't reached. Shin wondered if they could try living in one of those places, and he imagined that the end of their journey would be to reach that paradise, a place where they could start over. Fido, the robot, recalled the day Shin was fixing some issues in the Juggernaut and noticed him watching silently. That was their first encounter, and Shin realized that he had become the last survivor after the rest of the group had died. Fido was in terrible shape. Shin decided to bring Fido along to the squad's base. When he returned, he saw a unit of soldiers placing new recruits in the sector to fight alongside him. While the others were treated with cold indifference, Shin walked toward one of them, acted as if he were going to attack, then suddenly grabbed a nail and threw it at the wall, leaving everyone, even the robot, stunned. From that moment on, Fido became a part of their routine, listening to everything they had to say and sharing each moment inside the HQ, until Lev decided to send him along with the last survivors of the squad, asking him to protect them at all costs. The last person he ever saw was his best friend, Shin, right before he was hit by an enemy missile that wiped out the last of the 86 warriors. Kirina regained consciousness inside the damaged vehicle, realizing that her comrades were still holding their ground in the fight. Some of them, with no other option, had to face the enemy using only pistols, as their juggernauts were completely out of ammunition. While Shin was facing the enemy machines, Kirina was shocked to see Fido take a brutal hit in her place, becoming totally inoperable. The next day, after the battle was over, Shin examined Fido and realized there was no way they could continue the journey with him, as he was completely destroyed. So he removed a piece from Fido and carved his name into it, so he would never forget, adding this keepsake to the others he had collected from those who had fallen. Afterward, he told Raiden that he didn't believe they could go much farther, as only his juggernaut was still in working condition, and both food and ammunition were almost gone. They decided to take turns driving Shin's juggernaut. Kirina volunteered to drive first, since she had been the first to lose her own and was less exhausted than the others. The group agreed that whoever was driving would also be responsible for combat if any enemies appeared, and so they continued on their journey. At one point, Shin noticed that it was going to rain and asked Kirina to head toward a cave along a hillside. They ended up taking shelter there from the storm, prepared to deal with any threat if necessary. The next day, after the rain had passed, they resumed their route and realized they were getting closer to the enemy base, as the number of drones in the area was steadily increasing. Eventually, they arrived at an abandoned school in a forgotten village. It was the first time Kirina had ever seen a school. She suggested they all sleep there, and the others agreed. When she entered the classroom, she stared at the blackboard while Anju pretended to be the teacher, and the others played the roles of students. Kirina was thrilled, feeling for a moment what it might be like to experience student life. When night fell, they built a makeshift campfire using desks and books, sat around it, and talked to stay warm. The following morning, they saw they had only enough food for one more day, so they decided to move on, with Anju leading the way. The group reached a dead end and considered climbing a rocky cliff, but Shin asked them to look for another option. While Kirina was driving, he decided to take the wheel himself because he was getting bored, and everyone agreed. The boredom was growing, since all they could do was watch the scenery go by. As soon as Shin took control, he did something completely unexpected. He disengaged the trailer and even broke part of a wall to separate himself from the others, making it impossible for them to catch up. He explained that, as previously agreed, whoever was driving would also be the one responsible for engaging in combat against incoming enemies. Raiden quickly realized that Shin had already sensed the approach of hostile forces and had decided to take the lead in the battle by himself. Shin told everyone to keep moving forward, since hiding within the forest would make it harder for them to be found. The others still tried to get through the barricade he had created, but were unable to. They were frustrated that he had made such a decision without informing anyone, sacrificing himself in order to give the rest of them a chance to escape. Suddenly, they lost contact, and Shin was left alone, facing the enemy army in a merciless battle. When night fell, the remaining members of the group armed themselves and set out toward the battle, doing what they could. Meanwhile, Shin was severely injured after being hit by a missile. At that moment, he began hearing the voice of someone dear to him, vowing to destroy anyone who tried to harm his princess. Then Shin saw a massive drone coming toward him and realized he was the target, since his juggernaut was already inoperable. When the others arrived, they tried to help and fought back against the enemy, but he was already on the verge of death. One by one, the squad members fell under enemy fire until only Shin remained, wondering what name he would have after being assimilated by the enemy fleet, just like what had happened to Xiaorui. Elsewhere, Lina had arrived at Sector 86. Upon entering the HQ, Lev explained that everyone had already departed and had taken the robot with them. He asked her why she was there even though she was still suspended, and she answered that she wanted to see the front lines now that she had time to spare. That was when she found out that another group from Sector 86 had been sent to their deaths after Shin and the others had left. Lev allowed her to look around and mentioned that he had spent a long time watching the young ones come and go, but he had never seen a single high-ranking officer visit the sector. Lena found it strange to realize that he was also Alba, just like her. He told her that his wife had been one of the 86, and he had dyed his hair in order to follow his family during the transfer. He had enlisted hoping to help them regain their civil rights, but his family died in battle soon after. He said that when he arrived there, he had asked Shin if they had seen any enemy drones looking for a coward who had failed to protect his own family, because he wanted to go meet them and die as well. But Shin said he had never heard that name, which made Lev feel somewhat relieved, believing that his wife and daughter had found peace, and that someday he would be reunited with them. He also said he used to tell the 86 that he was Alba, and didn't mind if anyone wanted to kill him if it would help ease their pain. Since no one ever did, he felt he had missed his chance to die, and he apologized to Lena for taking up so much of her time with his story. After that, Lena went on to explore the HQ and got a glimpse of the daily life of those who had lived there. She found the cat that Shin and the others had taken care of and followed it until she saw it playing with a drawer. When she opened it, she found a pig-shaped ball and realized the cat just wanted to play. As she searched through the drawer, she was surprised to find the mission logbook that Shin had kept, along with a caricature of her drawn by Raiden, with a warning that she would regret it if she ever went looking for that diary, almost as if he had known she would someday do exactly that. Right after, she found a photo of all the squad members and saw that the survivors had left farewell messages for her before they departed. Kirina asked her to take care of the cat and to pick a cute name for it. Lena cried while reading Shin's message, which asked her to bring flowers for them when she reached the same place they had one day. At that moment, she decided to carry on and fight until the very end, to make all of their sacrifices truly meaningful. And that's how the first part of the anime 86 ends. If you want to see how the story concludes, I recommend you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode.